A warm welcome, everyone, to this session on innovation and growth in sustainability and food systems careers. I'd like to introduce our speaker, Dr. Dave Weatherspoon. Positioned as both the Associate Provost of Enrollment and Academic Strategic Planning and a Professor of Agricultural, Food, and Resource Economics, Dr. Dave Weatherspoon joined Michigan State University in 1998. He earned a BS degree in Crop and Soil Science from MSU, an MS degree in Agricultural Economics from the Pennsylvania State University, and a PhD in Food and Resource Economics from the University of Florida, Gainesville. Utilizing more than 28 years of extensive experience in applied economics to identify and analyze complex issues surrounding universities, businesses, non-governmental organizations, donors, and government agencies, Dr. Weatherspoon pursues solutions with a strong focus on organizational structure, policy analysis, and decision-making. Thank you for joining us, sir. Over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon to some, I'm sure. Thank you so much for that kind introduction. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning or this afternoon to talk to you about something I'm very passionate about and have been working on all my academic and professional life, and that's innovation and growth and sustainability and food systems, and thinking about the careers and what they look like in the future. So just a little bit about myself, next slide please, is that I'm from a small village, and people usually are surprised to hear that, a small village in Michigan, and it is called a village, and I was raised on a small farm. And I enrolled in crop and soil science at MSU to learn more about how to feed the hungry globally. And so while undertaking that bachelor's degree, I learned that there are many more issues out there than just production issues, and that there's a lot of a nexus of socioeconomic issues that prohibit people from accessing food around the world, and including the US. And so I spent my career up until recently conducting research and on food supply chain projects in more than 30 countries. And I've trained a number of undergraduate and graduate students from around the world in these areas. So this gives you a little perspective on how this has informed the presentation today. When we think about attracting the next generation of those that are concerned about making the world a better place and making sure that people have access to quality, affordable food. Next slide, please. Actually, two next slides.
Divya, could you advance to the second slide, please?
Yes, sir.
Past the introduction. Past it.
Yeah. So in terms of global trends in the food, thank you so much. In terms of global foods trends in the food system and supply chains, food is a vital component of everyday life. And however, current consumption and production patterns, they pose a threat to the environment, the way we currently consume, and the food security of future generations. And so COVID-19 has taught us so many lessons, painful lessons worldwide. And it showcased the fragility of our supply chains, our food supply chains, but other supply chains as well, and the vulnerability that we have to sudden shocks. We also saw this in 2008 in the financial crisis, where food wasn't readily available at an affordable price, and you saw food riots, what we call food riots around the world, in about 30 countries. So there's a global spotlight right now on how do we transform our food system and supply chains to make them more sustainable. Simultaneously, we also understand that they must withstand all of the disruptions and shocks. So when I teach classes about this, I think about, putting a person on the moon. That's a very difficult mathematical equation. But when you think about getting food supply chains right 365 days of the year everywhere in the world, that's a much more difficult mathematical set of equations to make sure that everyone has the right amount of food, access to the right amount of food at the right price at the right time. So the purpose of sustainability in the supply chain is to create this shared environmental, economic, and social value for all stakeholders, and all of us are stakeholders, let's be clear, to protect and improve the value of those goods. So fortunately, fortunately and unfortunately, today's executives are dealing with a complex and unprecedented mixture of social, environmental, market, and technological trends. And this requires sophisticated, sustainability-based management. In summary, you can't do business the way that you always used to do. So in the past, executives were reluctant to place sustainability at the core of their business strategy. And most of the times it was because, the benefits were not clear, or there weren't government incentives to get them jump-started in those types of investments. And then if you made an investment, what is the best technological adoption that you can have? Is it solar? Is it wind energy? Is it biodegradables, biodigesters? What do you invest, and what attributes were the consumers willing to pay for? So now we have a little better picture of this after about 10 or 15 years of various interventions and innovations in our systems. And so executives are able to choose from an array of improving sustainable production systems. So this generation of consumers expect more transparency, honesty, and tangible global impact from companies, and can choose from an array of sustainable, competitively priced, high quality products. So sustainability has gone mainstream. Sustainable agri-food businesses are redefining the corporate ecosystem by designing models that create value for the stakeholders, including employees, shareholders, supply chains, civil society, and the planet. This was not possible before. The ideal of creating shared value argues that businesses can generate economic value by identifying and addressing social problems that intersect with their business. Before, this was usually handled by the philanthropic part of the business versus the core of the business. So through regular dialogues with stakeholders and continual iterations, agri-food companies have made a lot of progress. Not saying that we're done, there's plenty more to do. And the sustainable agenda are better positioned to anticipate and react to economic and social, environmental, and regulatory changes as they arise, because they understand the whole. It's more of a holistic approach. So this brings us to risk management. So when you think about how vulnerable food supply chains are to natural disasters, conflicts in countries, pandemics, such as we're experiencing now, climate change, water scarcity, poor labor conditions, all these risks are high. But unlike the traditional forms of business risk, social and environmental risk manifest themselves over a longer time, often affecting the business on many dimensions and are largely outside the organization's control. Think of Greenpeace deciding that you're a very visible company and we should protest based on some input that you purchased. Maybe a minor input to your overall food supply chain, but you are a bigger target. So managing those types of risks are much more difficult. And so it requires making investments in technology and innovations, being close to your stakeholders, and developing adaptive strategies. Water is another great example where we have not protected our water systems. As I travel around the world, it's shocking to see how we treat water with a lot of our packaging waste from food systems, as well as from just poor sanitary conditions. This is the water that's required to grow our crops. This is the water that's required to process our food inputs. And so when you think about how we treat water, this is one example of one of those reimagining events that has to happen in the short run. Next slide, please. So sustainable development, fostering innovation. Those companies that proactively make sustainability core to business strategies are driving innovation and growth. Investing in sustainability is not only a risk management tool, it's also to drive this innovation. Redesigning products to meet environmental standards and social needs offers new business opportunities. And I would just note that regulatory changes always happen after the innovation happens. So this is a chance to be what we call to obtain first mover advantage in the market if you innovate early and quick. So many food manufacturing companies are integrating this sustainability into the innovation pipelines through programs that aim at to proactively minimize food loss and waste. And so we think about the whole life cycle of food, from the seed all the way to what happens after part of the product is consumed. Where does the waste go? And minimizing the impacts of that waste. So to summarize this, executives can no longer afford to approach sustainability as a nice to have or as a production function separated from the real business. It is the real business. Next slide, please. So I want to spend a little time talking about youth and sustainable development. All ages of people share in the goal of creating a sustainable and healthy planet. But it's the youngest members in our communities that have the most to win or lose based on what we do and our targets that we set to achieve. Young people from all around the world are beginning to recognize that they don't have to accept the systems that they've inherited. And so these their legacy dynamics at play that are causing illness and imbalance, both in humans and in the environment, and that are being passed down from one generation to the next. And so we look to train the next generation to think critically about what do we have to continue doing and what can be addressed, changed, modified. Next slide, please. So with climate change, conflict, hunger, and environmental crises regularly in the news and social media every day, the younger generation is more aware than any generation prior. This generation also is more well-traveled, and connected to people all around the world through these means. So youth have already made significant steps forward in getting at climate issues on the world stage, as we've seen, as well as on global political agendas. So food systems, when you think about overall food systems, they are the largest employer of youth globally. Food systems are the largest employer of youth globally. Youth have the largest stakes and therefore the strongest influence in shaping sustainable, resilient, healthy, and equitable food systems. Globally, as the largest consuming and food producing demographic, young people have the opportunity to be innovators, scholars, and environmental stewards, driving forward a nutritious, sustainable, and resilient food system that is better for people, planet, and prosperity. Next slide. So how do we unlock this powerful group? As I said, half the world is under 30. And you can see the gray hairs on my on my chin, so you know that I'm not in that half. Youth have more agency to take action and the right to demand urgent large-scale action from decision-making in government and businesses to defeat hunger. And we at MSU are interested in training global scholars because the easy problems have been solved. There are no more easy problems. Transforming our food system requires a holistic approach with many voices from people from all regions and all walks of life. So those that recognize the interconnection of the struggles to gain access to health, quality, safe and affordable, healthy, quality, safe and affordable foods, and how to do this while experiencing climate crises and biodiversity loss and clean water scarcity. Those are the types of people we want to help shape because these problems are daunting. They're gnarly. They will not be easily, most of them will not be totally solved, but they will be made better. It took us hundreds of years to get into this situation. It's going to take us time to get out of it. So transformative knowledge and transdisciplinary education is key if we are to make sustainable and systematic changes. Next slide, please. So speaking of advancing knowledge and transforming lives, sustainability is rooted in Michigan State University's foundation of education, research, and outreach. We are the first land grant, what was called a land grant institution. I asked that you look that up in the United States. So it was set up to understand the complexities of nature and the relationship of our own interdependence with nature. And so when we look at and to train people in agriculture and natural resources and sustainable systems. So MSU displays strong leadership and sustainability through multidisciplinary programs, curriculum, cutting edge research, experiential learning, community engagement, and sustainable operations. Collectively, these efforts and pursuits have established a strong global social impact platform driven by innovation. So transdisciplinary research portfolio examples include drought-tolerant and pest-resistant legumes, biosensors for safe food production and supply, digital traceability applications to the food supply chains, geo-based technologies, water conservation and management, biodegradable packaging, and so on. There's so many research projects on our campus. The cutting edge, state-of-the-art transdisciplinary education, research, and innovation programs will provide a pipeline of solutions from developing skilled workforce to delivering solutions that are responsive to needs of the agri-food community and industry at large. Next slide, please. So when we look at another example of how we make this impact, this is a picture of one of our carports that is covered by solar panels. And so we have 5,000 campus parking spaces that are covered by these solar panels, and they produce an estimated 15,000 megawatt watts per year of solar energy. This is just one example, but you'll also see that we are part of the United Nations Sustainable Growth Goals. You know, we're number 1 and number 4. We have just recently got this one, we're 2022 Princeton Review Guide for Green Colleges, and we're number 21 on that list, and I think they need to reevaluate that one. I think we're a little higher than that. But while much progress has been made, MSU sees many more opportunities to raise the visibility of our efforts, collaborate with global partners, and leverage resources to foster academic excellence. Next slide, please. So as core members of the campus community, our students are crucial to innovation, progress, and sustainability. Whether their passions lie in sciences, the arts, or business, MSU helps them use sustainability as a valuable tool for shaping their experience here. We have several student support, sustainable student groups on campus, for example, so that it's not just in the classroom, that you can also have outside the classroom experiences and with like-minded students. So as MSU research, education, and outreach programs seek solutions for solving some of our planet's most daunting challenges, our alumni have stepped on the global stage to take on unique and valuable roles as leaders and active global citizens. So we have alumni that are leaders in the United Nations agencies such as FAO, WTO, WHO, World Bank, governing ministries in agriculture and health in multiple countries. I've traveled to over 50 countries, and I've never been to a country where I didn't run into another Michigan State, what we call Spartans. That's our
Moniker.
Thank you, moniker, yes. So these alumni are creating a lasting legacy and solid foundation for the next generation of Spartans to build on for a sustainable future. And I'm also very proud to say that, you know, I've played a role in training some undergraduates and graduate students in this space. Next slide, please. So in summary, conflicts, economic shocks are related to the pandemic, extreme weather events exposed and exacerbated an already fragile food system. Knowledge providers must challenge the next generation to tackle the difficult, nuanced problems we face related to creating a sustainable food system. And educational providers must encourage ambitious learning experiences for our students that are responsive to sustainability needs of food, health, climate, and nature to pave a better way for the future.
Thank you so much, sir, for this insightful session.